Gentle and Classical Primer. It has been a popular resource recently in the homeschool community, and I wish I would have seen a video like this before I started the program so I could have more accurate expectations for what my family would experience with it. So today I am sharing with you my very honest review after going through this program about 1.5 times with my own children. Hey friend, I am Sarah, and I would love for you to introduce yourself in the comments if you are new here. If you're not new here, I always enjoy chatting with you, and I try to answer the questions that you leave and just comments and discussions that we can enjoy together. So let's just jump right in because there is a lot of information here, and I'm going to try to keep this as succinct as possible. I'm going to tell you the things that I liked about this program and the things I disliked, similar to the format of my Gentle and Classical preschool review video. So one of the first things that I really liked about this program is that it includes a lot of different subjects. So this program particularly includes manners and hygiene, which is really important for this age group. The age group of primer is basically preschool to kind of first grade. What I see it used for often is for kindergarten age, and that is the age for which we used it. I have a 5.5-year-old and also a 4-year-old, and both of them used it together. And so we have kind of both ages, both experiences with preschool and kindergarten. The manners and hygiene are great. What I disliked about this was the book selection that is used to teach the manners and hygiene. Everyday Graces. This is classic, very classical education in its approach, as well as I believe Charlotte Mason fits both of those. Everyday Graces by Karen Santorum is an older book that's kind of out of print, so it was quite expensive to pick up. I would not purchase it again, just right up front. Just because, one, this program does not make use of many things from it. So there is this huge book sitting on our shelf that I paid a lot of money for that we hardly used. We used one poem a week from this book. And I believe part of that is because this book is for an older age. This did not seem appropriate for a preschooler or kindergartner. I would use it more for an elementary student, even upper elementary student, just because the vocabulary, the types of stories, the length of the stories, everything about it just tells me it's for an older age group. Now, if you're into classical education, you have been training your children this way, you might have no problem with it. This is just our personal experience with this book. I feel like there could have been a clearer and better book selection for a younger age group to teach manners. There was hardly a dent made in the content of this book. We might revisit it in the future. I also just might resell it just because I didn't particularly find it clear and helpful. I do appreciate things about it. I have more about this in my video about how we teach manners to our children, and I have a recommendation in that video for something we enjoyed a bit more. I do also plan on making a full review of this book itself, so stay tuned for that and subscribe and ring the notification bell. Okay, another thing that I liked was the visual support that's offered. So for me as a teacher, there's a checklist each week of the different things that we need to be doing. For the student, there are memory statement cards, and they're for all of the different topics. What I disliked about this, there was too much printing, way too much printing. And I should have looked into just printing 1 week at a time so that I wouldn't have printed more than I would actually use. But some things like the art studies are repeated in different ways. There's like a 3-part art card. There's the big print, there's a smaller print, and that was unnecessary in my opinion. We didn't use so many of the cards, and so that was just something that I wish I would have done differently from the beginning. The cards are beautiful. I really appreciate all the work that went into them from Erin Cox and her team at the Gentle and Classical Press. Okay, talking about art, the art selections and variety were wonderful. The art lessons were great. This is part of the purchased package versus the free teacher's guide. So the art studies themselves come with different lessons, and you have an activity with that. You're going more in depth about the different art techniques and concepts that are really demonstrated through the art piece, and you also have another book to read to go with that. We didn't dive into all of that. I felt like that was a bit older than my children were ready for, so that seemed a bit beyond the age of my boys. But then also just with the art selections, they were only every other week. And so it just felt like we could have done so many more art studies, and we also could have done discussions of them. They just seemed a little bit repetitive, which was also a problem I had with gentle and classical preschool. And I think the reason for that is because you're planning on memorizing lots of things, and that's how classical education works. It's just not a good fit for my family and my teaching style. The music also was spot on. We loved the selection of classical kids that was recommended. I grew up on those CDs, and they are a favorite of my kids. They'll just pop them into our CD player. We still do CDs. They'll pop them into our CD player and listen to them on their own. So classical kids was spot on. Something that was not spot on for the age of my sons was a child's introduction to the orchestra. We loved the musical selections that are included in this one, but the wording and the explanations, the vocabulary was too high. The way that things were explained, there was so much information that was not necessary for a basic introduction to these instruments. I'll show you inside a bit so you can see what I mean. But we ended up pretty much not reading most of what's on the page and just looking at the instrument itself. And maybe that's just my kids and my family. Maybe you would have a great time going through this book and with this program, and your kids would just drink up that information. But that's just my 4-year-old and my 5.5-year-old. A Child's Garden of Verses was great with this program, and I like that the program recommends the Ted Jacobs Child's Garden of Songs, because those were a really fun way to get exposure to the Child's Garden of Verses. However, what I disliked about this was that there were often 2 weeks for the same poem. So many of the poems from Child's Garden of Verses were missed, and some of them I wouldn't particularly love to read to my kids. There are some that were not included that I would like to, or just include other poetry. And so just having multiple weeks with the same poem and we're not memorizing it necessarily just felt like repetitive. Theology is a book that I actually had already and was planning on using, and so it was nice to have it scheduled out in this program. I really like that they chose to use Theology. One thing that I wish would be different is that they would actually go through the entire thing. We had so many weeks, 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, that were on the same chapter, and it's just 1 page or 2 pages long. It's not a lot of information, and so I don't understand what we're doing except just reading it again, or maybe going back and discussing, but we could definitely move on and repeat this book again in the future. So that was something for me that didn't quite make sense. There's so much richness there that we just didn't end up getting to use. My family actually ended up just reading through the whole thing. We didn't follow the schedule through Gentle and Classical at all. Okay, my daughter is awake and she's joining us for the last part of this video. Do you have something to share with everyone? Something to say? Yeah? Just woke up. Okay. So moving on, we have our Bible memory cards, and songs were a favorite of mine. There's catechism included with songs, and that was really special to me because I didn't grow up being exposed to all of that, but I wanted to do that with my kids, and so having the songs to go with the catechism was awesome. A lot of the resources recommended by Gentle and Classical Primer were outside of the scope of my community, and I really appreciate being exposed to those and just having those resources now for my family to use. So thank you, Gentle and Classical Press, for choosing such great things. What I disliked about this part of the program was the Bible recommendations. The Bible recommended for this program, again, seems very classical education. In nature, and that's just not a fit for me. I probably shouldn't make a big deal about that since it's gentle and classical, but it just seemed repetitive again, and like there was no support offered. Just as with the preschool program, the Bible for this program didn't really have any activities, any discussion related to it. Instead, it was just kind of on your own, which makes sense in a way, but I wish that was there. The weekly checklists were awesome. I really liked having those. I did purchase the planning grids, and I would not purchase them again, just because from the weekly checklist, I could have done my own scheduling, so it just wasn't necessary for me. It can be helpful for some people. Then hymns. I love that hymns are included in this program. It was really good as a reminder for me to be teaching my children songs with really good sound theology. What I didn't like about this, though, is that there are only 3 hymns included for the whole year. So each term has 1 hymn, and we could have moved faster. So I would just add in more hymns in the future. One of the hymns I did not know, and so we actually didn't study that even. So we did 2 of the hymns, which was okay, and my kids learned them well, but we could have just done more on our own, I guess. I loved the book selections for the most part. The Brambley Hedge was really awesome. I love the sweet stories from that collection. Little Pilgrim's Big Journey was also amazing. What I disliked, okay, I disliked the emphasis on just old stories, which is classical education. And I think this program helped me understand, as I was dipping my toes into the classical education world, that that's not really the educational model that I want to use for my teaching style, for my family, for our needs. So it was helpful for understanding that personally. The Children's Book of Virtues was not a favorite for me. Again, realized that classical education is really not a fit for us through that book, just because it's a beautiful book and it teaches good virtues, but there are some stories that I would rather use to teach those things instead, and rather have a very clear Christian understanding of those things, not just from myths and those kind of stuff, but actually like using biographies or maybe a more Charlotte Mason type of approach to those studies. That's all I can think of right now. If I think of more things, I might add them in a comment below. Just to sum up and give you my final thoughts about this program, we like using, like when we used Gentle and Classical Preschool, we did end up doubling up on this program just because it felt thin and repetitive again. It is gentle, and so that makes sense. I again reached the end of the program being excited about moving on to something else, which might be something that just often happens when you're ready to finish a curricula, and it's not necessarily the curriculum's fault. It's just more of like being ready to do something else, wanting something new and exciting. But with this one, it did feel like it was kind of the curriculum, just because it was repeating a lot, and I felt like I had put so much work into preparing the curriculum for us to use and wasn't getting as much out of it as I thought I would, and so there's just some disappointment there. Do I plan on using this program again? Not in its entirety. Like with Gentle and Classical Preschool, I printed out a lot of things for this. I don't want to let those go to waste, and I do like the books. I'm not planning on going through this again with the schedule and following everything. There were so many parts that didn't really fit my teaching style, and just I heard someone else mention this as well, just the administration of Gentle and Classical was hard for me as a teacher. So something that I would put it more into a style that would fit our family, which I'm sure is encouraged by Gentle and Classical Press. We will definitely use the books. Theology, we will use continually. We will use the storyboards that I've printed out. Those are really nice. I don't think I mentioned that in my likes and dislikes, but storyboards are amazing to use. My boys looked forward to reading the stories and afterward having that narration time with the storyboards. I think it was really helpful for just ingraining storytelling in them, teaching them good storytelling and summarizing and remembering details and all of that. So that was a really good part of the program. I don't want to diss this program at all. I just wish that I would have heard someone say these things so I could go into it with a more accurate understanding of what my family would experience. Again, I wouldn't purchase a full package, I think. I would use the free teacher's guide, and I would probably purchase the storyboards, and I think that would be it. I would not purchase the planning grids again. I just didn't find them super useful because the checklist is already there. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, and I appreciate you guys. If you haven't yet checked out my Gentle and Classical Preschool review, go ahead and do that. And I'm planning on coming out with some more kindergarten resources soon. Just wanted to try them out first before I share them with you. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll link some more videos related to this over here. See you guys next time. Ciao.